Right now, here's one of the most popular stories on Cleveland19.com. This one involving a former Cleveland Browns player. Federal judge in New Jersey granted Shark Tank investor Daymond John a restraining order against 3 former show contestants accused of defamation, including former Cleveland Browns player Al Bubba Baker, who retired as a Brown after the 1990 NFL season. Previously, he claimed his business, Bubba's Boneless Ribs, was denied a chance to succeed due to John while appearing on the show. You can read the full report on our website, Cleveland19.com.
Now.